Hello there, and let me pose you a question. If humans were blind, do you think we would know the sun exists? That is a very interesting question that I have just heard from a blind man. His name is Tommy Edison. He has a channel on YouTube, and there he answered this question. And to that question, I wrote this short script here. If humans were blind, would we know the sun is there? Would we ever have gone for the stars as we did? And on that video, Tommy casually remarked that he does not understand what is the setting of the sun on the horizon, or such things that we make such fuss about. And that if all humankind was blind like him, we would never have built rockets or gone out of the earth looking for the stars. He casually said that, answering some of the comments on his channel, and it hit me deeply, made me think about it. It is truly an interesting question. What would we have done then? I thought. Would we not be preoccupied with the cosmos, then invest all those resources in directly improving life on Earth and deal with the things we know, such as hunger and misery? That could be an alternative if we were not investing on that billionaire endeavors to go to the stars. But I think not. I think we would still have gone for the stars. And to tell you why, let's go back a little while to ancient Greece. On ancient Greece, when you think about ancient Greece, you probably think about Aristotle and Plato. They are very famous, and they were men dedicated to the instruction of others. They were doing their best for the future generations, or at least what they believed was the best. They were not always very right. And while they were very patient in teaching morals and teaching about the natural world, in teaching what they believed was medicine. They were also very religious and reverent to their gods. And so, when someone questioned their gods, they said they did not need instruction. They needed punishment. That was how you taught someone to respect their gods. And till then, nature was the ultimate, undeniable proof that the gods existed. You simply could not say anything against it. And it also proved their care for us all. It showed they care. They made that for us. And that's because the patterns of nature are the ways the gods taught humankind how to count. Such patterns that we see could not be the product of anything else but of intelligent design, is what they believed. The days and night, the seasons of the moon and those of the years, each with the proper designed time for each thing, taught humans how to expect the regularity of creation and count. It activated our minds to predict those things and to prepare for the harvest and all else. It spurred human from ignorance into knowledge and advanced society. That is the old argument for intelligent design. We can find it on the oldest Egyptian texts about how the Nile is also very regular and how the seasons come. And you can also find even on modern literature. Aristotle even argued that it was better to be blind than to be deaf, because he said the deaf were dumber because they could not learn as others could in hearing. Now, they were clearly wrong on many points, and imposing those fairy tales of their gods on reality, but they still had a point. The way the environment affects our evolution is a very strong point. If we had come from some blind lineage of apes, how different would the world be? Well, certainly much. But would we be unable to differentiate day from night? Certainly not. Well, simply saying night is colder, indeed, we would be able to tell even direct sunlight from shade, how it feels on us. Just a little bit of time exposed, we can tell if you are in the sun or not, even with our eyes closed, or even if you are blind. And that gradual rising of temperature throughout the day and the coming of night, always in that cycle, always with the same amount of time, would certainly be perceived by humankind. We would certainly be familiar with that and number it and give it a name, quite akin to day and night. And the seasons of the year would likewise feel very clearly through every other sense we have, the way they repeat on these discrete cycles. And so that argument, or the way that nature taught humans how to count, how it activated our minds, still work, even if we are blind, even if we could not see. Now, finding the position of the sun and even more of the moon would require some more ingenuity than that. It would be much harder to do our old calculations in how we could tell the eclipses, how you could predict them, such things, how we could navigate by the stars. It would be very difficult. But even then, when we could see the clouds, we still attributed rain to be the work of the gods. And when if we were that blind humankind, if we are feeling the sporadic and seasonal rain that comes, we would certainly also attribute to some god, to some mystical phenomena. We would not immediately stumble upon our modern knowledge of the water cycle. But we would think about it. We would give it to some god, some explaining. It would be required from our intellect to explain it. And when we gave it a reason, probably as supernatural as we did, we would still think about what would that imply and many other things about it. We would probe into the testable propositions of those reasons, and we would find out more. We would discard old ideas and go with that is actually proven to be true. Now, today we see many things beyond our natural senses. The great Webb telescope that was just launched a few months ago, it is cooled down to some extremely low temperatures, like very near absolute zero. And it hides in the shadow of the Earth. That is the Earth, and it's always keeping itself on the shadow of the Earth while the Earth goes around the sun. Because it cannot get hot. It needs to be very cold in order to measure. Because it is measuring wavelengths of light that are invisible to our eyes. So that we can peer further into the dust of galaxies than what normal light can. Make that in order to see what our natural senses cannot. When we use also infrared goggles that we can see heat and that things, it's also a very famous thing that we use to go beyond our normal seeing range. We convert that infrared light into light that we can see to something that our senses can perceive. We have engineered ways to detect things that are beyond our normal senses. Those goggles, that telescope has some senses, has things that react to that. It creates a phenomena that we can now observe that phenomena through a series of other events. Even about black holes, we have some audio that is the sound of black holes. If you look online, you can find it. And it's the hum of the universe, it is called, I think. But we have turned those waves, those crazy things into sound. And so I believe the blind humankind would do the same. We would build instruments that would translate that unseen world, not in phenomena that you can see as we do today, but in things that we could hear, in things that we could feel. Even in our brain, we have a large part dedicated to sight. And blind people still use that part. They have some sort of echolocation that they can avoid objects even when they do it without thought about doing it. It is said that they walk a corridor full of objects and avoid them while not knowing that they were avoiding, while thinking it was an empty corridor. There are some videos about that, but even without that super specialization of our senses, without developing super sensitive other things, we would still build up machines that can do that, that can translate the world into things that you can perceive. And we would see that the atmosphere gets thinner, and would send balance and things there to measure and bring back that data into some form that we can perceive. And we would send it out higher towards the stars. That is what I think. Some very interesting thing about that though is about how would they sound the microscopic warp. That's a very interesting thing, or modern idea of microbiology and how they cause diseases. It's very important. It's the very basis of our medicine, understanding the cellular level of things. How would they do that? Instead of a microscope, how would they probe it deeper? Well, that would be very hard, but like us, they would try many things out and would seek for it. And I think this is a very interesting problem today because we too are having problem in actually seeing things. Light is simply too bulky when we are talking about the scale of atoms. We can reduce that wavelength of light to gamma rays if you want that scale, but that thing is simply too destructive. It interferes with our observation. We cannot use gamma rays to see because they're too energetic. And so we have invented something called an electron microscope, where we use electrons to make very tiny bridges between the material, and we measure the electronegativity of that bridge as it interacts with the material. And so when there is more interaction, we can see the atom and the spaces between them, the lattice of it. If you search online, you can actually see real photos of atoms, not made with light, but made with electrons, that is then converted into something that you can see. It is much more akin to the collision of touch to probe the atom than to actually see them. And we translate that phenomena into things that we can analyze with our senses. So they would do the same. But today we are stuck. Our amazing capacity of seeing actually, the amazing capacity that took us too far, so far, cannot peer further into that subatomic world. As we said, the light does not work there. And we need to think about that kind of blind macroscope in order to understand the world further, to peer into those subatomic parts of it. We rather have been led astray by that capacity of seeing, by thinking that light is some indivisible particle. Like the phenomenon of rain can happen by itself, has some intrinsic property of water, and ignoring the atmosphere because we cannot see it. We have been doing that with light and with those subatomic particles, simply because we do not seem to be able to peer any further to attribute the very strange behavior of the electrons in those things to some surrounding atmosphere. We need more resolution. And so we need to do like the blind humankind would and develop better instruments to probe the universe. And so that is why I think that humankind, even while being blind, would eventually discover the sun. They would invest and go to the stars like we did. And also why we will not be stuck here forever on this sense of these subatomic particles we have today, but we will eventually develop a means to peer further and explain those behaviors by what affects them all around. That interacts with you, that theory about the subatomic particles and how we should change our modern focus of describing nature with some fixed laws and these especially preset units called elementary particles. Then I have a very nice book out on Amazon I published last month where I talk about it. About the reasoning of our scientific minds, what makes a valid scientific statement. And so I analyzed Aristotle a lot back then and go on throughout a little bit of history to get where we are today, the developments we have made, and some things that are still quite like our past selves, based more on mysticism than actually evidence that we have. If you are interested, this call on the origin of the species by means of logical succession. And here I have this little script. Oh, invisible. Here is the thing I was just seeing. I wrote this little answer if you are interested in seeing my actual writing for it. And that's what I think of that very interesting question that Tommy Edison brought up.